Welcome to Credibility by Camera.
Welcome to Credibility by Camera with Kerry Barrett, Emmy award-winning journalist and trusted video authority for attorneys and law firms. Kerry shares proven strategies to help you show up with confidence, build trust on screen, and turn your online presence into a powerful business tool. Let's raise your visibility and your credibility one video at a time. I'm your host, Zofia Morales, and today we're discussing camera confidence. Tech does not have to be terrifying. Welcome, Kerry. I'm so happy to have you again.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, as usual.
Excellent. So when we're talking about tech, what is this bare minimum setup that a lawyer should have to look and sound professional on video?
Yeah, the basics are a face, a voice, and a phone. When you really strip it down, that's all you need to create solid video. Now, are there other elements? Are there other things that you should have that will bump up your production relatively inexpensively and relatively effectively and efficiently? Absolutely. One of them is a microphone. We can certainly dive into what I recommend. The other is lighting, and the other is understanding how to frame yourself in the shot. We all know that our phones have broadcast quality video, but you know as well as I do that you've seen some videos that do not look broadcast quality.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. That's because people don't understand lighting, they don't understand audio, and they're not sure how to frame themselves in the shot either. So understanding those elements is what will take your video from sort of, meh to amazing.
All right. So these optional extras that you mentioned, they're actually pretty important, probably.
They are pretty important. So, there's a couple of things that I always suggest. One is having a microphone. Now, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you are looking to create longer form podcast type content, I would suggest having a nice external mic, a Shure or a Rode, or if you need a Yeti. If you're creating social media content, so shorter content, think, short clips on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts, for example, you don't need to worry about recording on your computer and setting up all of those external mics. All you really need is a small clip-on lavalier mic. The one that I use is called Hollyland, and I have a gear guide I'm more than happy to share with people, but it is a simple magnetized microphone that clips onto your shirt. There is an adapter you plug into your phone. You could use it with an iPhone or with an Android, and that way you get nice solid sounding audio for your video.
Yeah.
A key element, one of the other things to remember that's important about that is if you're shooting outside. So it wasn't all that long ago that anybody would have shot a professional
thought about it. Yeah.
But now we see a lot of videos where people are able to record when inspiration strikes and they're outside walking and they shoot a video. The nice thing about having a microphone is that because it's close to your mouth, it reduces a lot of that ambient noise. So if you're outside and it's windy or there's cars or there's other people around, you're able to filter out some of that, and your voice is what cuts through the noise.
What are the most common mistakes do you see that people make when it comes to like the lighting, the sound, and the framing?
Yeah. So aside from not using a microphone, it's not using lights. So a lot of the things that I talk about will seem like they're purely aesthetics, but they are aesthetics with a purpose. And the purpose is to make sure that you look like the authority you are and that you're able to connect with the audience and that you don't look amateur. Nobody wants to look amateur on video. So lighting is the next thing. Generally speaking, it's easiest to get the right kind of lighting shooting facing a window, meaning the window is in front of you and your phone is in between you and the window. That is the easiest way to get nice full lighting. Now, I happen to be facing a window. I also, because I do this for a living, I also have other lights set up around me. I have a light in front of me and I have two lights that are at about 45-degree angles on either side. It's a little bit overcast and cloudy here today, which generally speaking is actually better for shooting. But I find based on my background, and I realize that there's a lot to keep up with here, but I like to have some additional lighting in front of me. It's one of the things I work through with my clients is finding their studio space, if you will, within their home or their office so that they know and they always have a good setup. The other element in terms of framing that you mentioned is basically means where you're positioned in front of the camera. And there's a couple of elements. I use a lot of news analogies because broadcast news is my background. I was an anchor and a reporter for 20 years. And if you think about a news program, at least the very beginning, the opening shot, you will generally find that the anchor or anchors are framed up in a way that's fairly tight. And if you're watching this now versus listening, you'll see what I mean. It is about chest or torso-ish up, and there is limited headroom, meaning there's limited room between the top of your head and the bottom of the shot. And there's not a lot of space on either side of you either. The reason that anchors are framed that way is because it gives the audience the best chance to look into their eyes. And I'm saying that with sort of air quotes around it because you know you're not actually looking into the anchor's eyes. Nevertheless, our brain responds to it in the same way. And so we create an instant opportunity to build rapport and to establish trust. And so you want to be framed fairly tightly. This applies whether you're shooting vertical video or horizontal video. You want to have your camera at either eye level or just very slightly above. And usually, not always, there is some wiggle room here, but generally speaking, you want to be in the middle third of your computer. So there is something called the rule of thirds, and it is the way that your screen is divided, right? So 3 vertical spaces, 3 horizontal spaces. You want your face to be in that middle box.
So we've talked about a bunch of gear related stuff and kind of technical aspects of putting yourself in front of the camera. How much does the gear matter compared to the preparation and delivery to actually be in front of it?
They both matter.
Do the thing.
Yeah. No, they both matter, but in different ways. So the setup is intimidating to a lot of people. I'm not a technical person. I really am not. So the things that I advise my clients to use and do are easy to implement.
Accessible.
Yes, exactly, accessible. And they are, once you know what to do, they're very easy to do. And that's sort of your opening act, if you will, right? You want to know that you look and are coming across on camera as the authority that you are. However, you may have the most beautiful setup and the perfect audio and the most fantastic lighting, but if you then deliver like an amateur, or if you come across as timid or unsure of yourself, none of that other stuff is going to matter, because at the end of the day, people are really looking at what you're saying. And although they might not even consciously acknowledge this, they're also listening to the way in which you say it. And so it's a combination of understanding delivery, understanding energy, understanding how to use this little box in your message journey, if you will, and understanding all of those other elements, the body language, the vocals, the hand gestures, the posture, all of that stuff that goes into creating a compelling delivery. One of the analogies that I often use, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see I talk about this semi-regularly, is that conceptually, speaking on camera is exactly the same as speaking to someone at a noisy restaurant. So imagine you are at one side of the table and you are looking, I don't know, there's 8 people there. You're looking to talk to somebody who is on the other side of the table down at the other end. what are some of the things you would do in order to make sure that that person heard you? You'd probably lean in. You would project your voice a little bit more. You might use hand gestures very strategically to emphasize what it is you're saying. And conceptually, speaking on camera is very similar. There are some slight nuances, but if you're able to portray that sort of energy, you will be, halfway there into understanding how to deliver on camera.
Excellent. I like that analogy. It really gives you something you can hang your hat on and actual behaviors you can deploy.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Once you start practicing, you will, and yes, can I help somebody shorten their timeline? Can I make sure that they're not putting out anything that is egregiously wrong or inaccurate or bad for that matter? Once you start practicing and you understand what all of this feels like, and it will feel very unnatural at the beginning.
Yes.
You will feel awkward and odd, and you will feel like you are over the top, but I promise you that's not what's coming through. Once you start practicing, you will get confident in your skills. The competence comes first, but once you actually start, then you begin to build the confidence. And then when you build the confidence, it actually becomes fun because you figure out where you can push things and how you can try new techniques. And some of them will work and some of them won't, but you'll be okay with that as well because again, bottom line, you have a message and you're delivering it in an effective way.
I love that. So for someone, an attorney who's filming from like their home or office, what are some of your best tips for setting up the space?
Best tips for setting up the space is don't record your video on Zoom or anything like that. Zoom has bad audio, right? There's so many people using it. They compress the bandwidth and it means that your audio is not going to sound great, even if you do have an external microphone on. So use your phone, set it up on a tripod if you're going to be sitting still so that not doing a walk and talk, so that you have a nice solid shot. If you are using if you're using an iPhone or an Android, generally speaking, you want to be using not the camera that is on your screen side. You want to be using the camera that's on the other side. I would say the front facing camera, but some people are.
So not selfie mode.
Not selfie mode. Exactly. And the reason is that camera that's on selfie mode is not as good as the camera on the other side. It tends to have a little bit more distortion in the video, and you probably won't like the way that you look quite as much as you will like it on the other side where the camera's better and the distortion is less.
How do you frame yourself up when you have it on a tripod and the screen is away from you?
Yeah.
So that you're filming with that camera. How do you frame yourself in that situation?
That is such a good question. And I'm so glad that you asked it. So there's two ways. The first is, and this is on my gear guide, the first is that you buy a small monitor that basically attaches to the bottom half of the non-selfie side of your camera. And so you can see exactly how you're framed up while you're looking at this side of your camera. Now, if you're not,
they make those?
Oh, they do. Yes, they make them for Androids and they make them for iPhones. I actually have two phones.
I got to get your gear guide. Are you going to send us that so we can put it below the video?
I can absolutely send you that. I would be delighted to. So they make them for, again, I have an iPhone and I have an Android. I happen to like the video on my Android a little bit better, which is why I use that. But that's just personal preference. There's no one right answer. If you have an iPhone, absolutely go ahead and use an iPhone. If you're going to buy the monitor, just make sure that you get the one, and I have them split up on the gear guide. The other option, and I will show you this, if you're looking for something that requires a little less tech, and if you're listening to this podcast, I would suggest coming over and watching the video so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is on the gear guide as well. And basically it's a clip.
I love those.
Yeah. So you clip it on your camera, and then I don't know if you can see that. And then you can see based on the reflection exactly how you're framed up in the lens so that you know that you are framed correctly.
How cool
This
is
is
that?
yeah, this is a little less techy and a little less expensive, although all of the options are fairly inexpensive. They're, I think, within almost everybody's budget. So either one of those is a great opportunity. One thing that you can do on your iPhone is if you go under the cameras, if you go into the settings and then you click on camera, and then you'll see another drop down or another sidebar that's pulled up, and one will say grid. If you toggle grid on, it will actually split your
It'll
screen,
do
if
the
you will. Yep.
thirdsies for you.
Yes. So you can
Yes.
practice getting that shot exactly right. Take a screenshot of it, and then you know exactly where you need to be, and you can set up your reverse shot, if you will, knowing that you have it down pat.
I love that. I love that. Quick question before we move off of like the studio, if you will. What is your opinion or your take on like the green screen and the fake background?
Not a fan.
Okay.
I have seen a number of them. I've seen a number of them. I've seen hundreds of them, maybe even thousands at this point. And generally speaking, there's a few reasons that I don't like them. Number one, I have seen out of the thousands, a handful that are done well. Usually when you have the fake background, you move your hand and it cuts off your fingers. You have a club for a hand, or you move and it cuts off part of your head. They just look a little sloppy. If you have pristine lighting, if your lighting is perfection, then you can get away with it. But I have very rarely seen lighting that pristine.
Yeah.
The other element is that when you are creating video for social, nobody really likes to be sold. And if you have a green screen up behind you that's got a logo on it, it's an immediate reminder that you're being sold something. It may not be
Oh.
overt, but and we recoil from that. And I realize you may work for a firm that requires you to have that in the background. It's not my first choice by a long shot.
So, what would be like a short checklist that lawyers can run through before they hit the record button to make sure they don't have to redo something that went pretty well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a checklist I can share with you as well that we can put in the show notes and under the video. So it is making sure that you are framed correctly. Again, think of the rule of thirds. You want the majority of your face to be in that middle box. It is having some sort of microphone, whether it is a clip-on if you're recording social media videos, or a more substantial standalone external mic for longer format videos, podcasts, for example. It is making sure that you are lit evenly. So if you don't have a window that you can face in your space, having lighting. Ideally, it's one right in front of you and two on the sides. And then making sure that you're delivering in a compelling and authoritative kind of way. That takes a lot more practice. But that one of the things I suggest for practice is opening up your phone and just riffing into it for 30 seconds. And it doesn't have to be about work, it could be about anything. And then look at it and pick one thing that you want to work on. So maybe it's eye contact, or maybe it is reducing the number of ums and ahs that you said, as I say one. So, and pick that one thing and work on that until you feel like you have your arms sort of around it. You won't have perfected it. You can't perfect anything in 30 days. In fact, as we mentioned in the last episode, perfect doesn't exist. But until you feel like you have your arms around it, and then move on to the next thing. Maybe it's the energy with which you deliver, and work on that for a while. That tends to be the one that's hardest for most people. Do that for 30 days and then look at the difference between video 1 and video 30. And I promise you will see some change, and that will inspire you to keep moving. When you try and work on all of the things all at the same time, it's like running 65 marathons. You don't make a lot of progress in any of them. And that's when people get deflated. That's when they get, they begin to lose enthusiasm, and they hang up this practice or this skill, and they don't move forward. So work on one thing at a time. And when you see the difference, it will propel you forward additionally.
Exactly. And well, one thing I discovered recently in developing skills is doing something for 5 minutes every day of the week
Hmm.
gets you farther than taking an hour one day of the week to like really pound on it. I like the way that fits in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And to iterate on that just a little bit more, you don't get good at anything by dabbling in it. You need to,
Yes.
if it's 5 minutes at a time and it's 5 minutes a day, you will make so much more progress than sort of dipping your big toe in here and there. You will never get good at this if you dabble. It's like any skill.
Yes, I love that. So, what do you have to say to somebody who's worried that they're going to mess up the tech during like a live video or a webinar or worse yet, like completely lose the train of thought and like deer in headlights?
Well, part of it is practice and knowing your content when you have it down cold. Knowing especially the introduction and the conclusion. Those are it's the law of primacy and recency. What do we hear first and what do we hear most recent? And those are the two elements that will have the most impact. If you're creating social media video, that means your hook and your call to action. The part in the middle, you should have some sort of bullet points or outline, but outside of that, making a mistake is not a deal breaker. If it's a real short form video and you only have 30 seconds, maybe you want to go back and redo it. But people are not expecting perfection. And if you acknowledge a mistake that you make on a live video or a live stream or a podcast or whatever it is, turn it into a personality showcase. It'll endear you to the audience and then move on with the rest. You don't need to fumble all over yourself apologizing or trying to correct. Just correct and move on. But I
I
promise
love
you,
that.
your audience is generous with their ability to understand when and why mistakes happen.
That's wonderful. It kind of allows you to go, you know what, it's all right.
Yep.
And actually it might have been a good thing.
Yeah,
Thank you
exactly.
so much for sharing all this with us today, Kerry.
You are incredibly welcome. It's my pleasure.
Great. And thanks for tuning in to Credibility by Camera. If today's episode helped you think differently about video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with your colleagues. Are you ready to elevate your on camera presence? Head to kerrybarrett.com to learn more. Until next time, keep showing up and let your credibility speak for itself.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.